The winter fuel payment crisis has erupted into a full-blown disaster, leaving Britain's elderly population to suffer in silence. Labour's decision to cut back support for pensioners has sparked outrage, with over 1 million older Britons skipping meals to stay afloat. Now, Age UK is speaking out, exposing the devastating impact of this policy failure.
Yeah, all the things you say, very accurate description of what we found in this polling, because we'd seen some stories around, you probably have too, suggesting that lots of older people don't need their winter fuel payment, and indeed that, large numbers are using it to buy luxuries. So we wanted to dig into the truth. So we asked older people how they used their winter fuel payment last year. And as you say, 3/4 did use it to help them with their heating bills, and another quarter used it with their food bills, because of course all those prices have gone up so much, haven't they, over the last couple of years? So even people who expected, I think, to retire very comfortably have noticed in their own incomes just how much more difficult life has become. And of course, if you haven't got much to start with, then it's a really, really difficult situation. And we've just had, as you say, our first cold snap, but we're not even in December yet. So I think our worry at Age UK is what's actually going to happen over December, January, February, all of which traditionally in this country are really cold months, especially up north and in Northern Ireland, in Scotland. What are people going to do there? They're going to really struggle. And we certainly are hearing of people already who are trying to ration their energy use, turning down the heating or turning it off altogether. And they're going to put themselves at risk as a result.
And we saw here in your survey, 55% of OAPs would have to turn down or reduce the hours they use their heating at home as a consequence of this cut. 1 in 10 said they would cut down on the number of hot meals they eat. And the last thing you want to be doing if you're vulnerable and elderly is to be cutting down the energy going in, because that's your internal furnace. That's what keeps you going. Out of 10 million British pensioners, 6 million thrust into fuel poverty as a consequence of this. Do you live in hope that this could be U-turned and turn around, or do you think we're stuck with this now?
Well, it's not too late for the Chancellor to do something about it, even though we are heading into winter. Time is rapidly running out, but she could definitely help if she chose to.
Labour's move to means test the winter fuel payment has been called one of the harshest policy decisions in recent years. Previously, millions of pensioners could access up to £300 in energy bill support, but now eligibility is restricted to those on pension credit. It sounds straightforward, but the consequences are dire. With the system overloaded and application processing times stretching to 12 weeks, thousands of older Britons are left in limbo during the harshest months of the year. The numbers are staggering. Age UK's research shows that over 1 million pensioners have been forced to skip meals. Among them, nearly 2/3 suffer from long-term health conditions, leaving them especially vulnerable. For these individuals, missing even a single meal can worsen their health, yet they've been forced to choose between buying food and keeping the heating on. Take Joan, an 84-year-old widow in Manchester. She's battled arthritis for decades and now faces another battle, one against the bitter cold. Joan applied for pension credit in October, hoping it would unlock the winter fuel payment she desperately needs, but it's December and she's still waiting. Joan says, "I wrap myself in blankets and wear my coat indoors, but it's not enough. I've had to cut back on food, eating only once a day because I can't afford both heating and groceries. I don't know how much longer I can hold out." Joan's story is just one of many. The backlog of pension credit applications is unprecedented, with government figures showing a 145% increase in claims since July. While additional staff have been deployed to tackle the surge, the delays persist, leaving pensioners in a cruel waiting game. For those fortunate enough to have savings, the delay is frustrating but manageable. However, for pensioners living week to week, it's devastating. Many are unable to pay their energy bills, and some have already been plunged into debt. Caroline Abrahams of Age UK has been vocal about the issue, warning that this crisis is not only harming individuals, but could also place immense strain on the NHS. She explains, "It's extremely worrying. People with long-term health conditions are the most vulnerable. If they're not eating properly and can't heat their homes, their health will deteriorate rapidly. This is a disaster that could have been avoided." The charity's data also reveals a deeper, more troubling reality. Older households aren't just skipping meals, they're slashing the number of hot meals they consume. This trend has left fridges empty and ovens cold as pensioners attempt to cut costs. Meanwhile, more than 900,000 pensioners with chronic health conditions are terrified of the debt they'll incur if they keep their heating on this winter. The implications of this crisis extend far beyond individual households. Local charities report an increase in demand for food banks, while emergency shelters brace for an influx of elderly people seeking refuge from the cold. The strain on public services is already being felt, with hospitals reporting higher admissions for cold-related illnesses. Yet, the government insists it's doing all it can. A spokesperson defended the policy changes, pointing to the triple lock, which has increased pensions significantly. They also highlighted a 51% rise in cleared pension credit applications since July. Millions of pensioners will still receive the winter fuel payment. Our drive to boost pension credit take-up has already seen over 40,000 more pensioners receiving support, the spokesperson said. These reassurances, however, ring hollow for many. Critics argue that the decision to means-test the winter fuel payment was short-sighted, prioritising cost-saving over the well-being of Britain's elderly. Caroline Abrahams summed it up best. This crisis has shattered the myth that all older people are living comfortably. Many are struggling, and the government must act before it's too late. Campaigners are now urging Labour to reverse the means-testing decision. They argue that the winter fuel payment was a lifeline for pensioners, providing a simple, accessible way to afford heating during the coldest months. Restricting it to those on pension credit, they say, has created unnecessary bureaucracy and left many pensioners falling through the cracks. But the government is standing firm, arguing that means testing ensures the funds are directed to those who need them most. This stance has sparked fierce debate, with critics pointing out that the current system fails to account for the significant delays in processing applications. Meanwhile, the situation grows increasingly dire. Reports from across the country paint a bleak picture of pensioners bundled in layers of clothing, huddled around candles for warmth, and rationing tea bags to make them last longer. These are not images of a prosperous nation, but of a society failing its most vulnerable citizens. In the midst of this turmoil, some pensioners have taken matters into their own hands. Community-led initiatives are cropping up across the UK, with neighbours banding together to provide hot meals and warm spaces. These grassroots efforts are a testament to the resilience and compassion of ordinary Britons, but they also highlight the gaps left by government policy. For now, the question remains, how long will it take for the system to catch up? With winter well underway, every day of delay puts lives at risk. The stakes couldn't be higher, and the pressure is mounting on Labour to address the crisis they helped create. If there's one thing this scandal has made clear, it's that Britain's elderly deserve better. They've worked hard, paid their dues, and contributed to society for decades. To see them struggling in this way is not just a policy failure, it's a moral failing. As the temperature drops, the heat is on the government to act decisively. Will they rise to the occasion or let this crisis deepen further? Only time will tell, but for the millions of pensioners caught in the crossfire, time is running out.